So the Chicago Bulls front office and Zach LaVine's camp is finally telling the truth that their relationship is completely shattered and full of mistrust. And honestly, this honesty is welcomed because we all knew this. And so I'm going to talk about how we got here, because the state of the Chicago Bulls and their max contract player, Zach LaVine, is completely sad, and the situation seems to be getting worse by the day. Let's just take a stroll back in time and figure out how the hell we got to this awful situation. So on June 22nd, 2016, the Bulls traded Derrick Rose to the New York Knicks. Then 1 year later, on June 22nd, 2017, the Bulls traded Jimmy Butler to the Minnesota Timberwolves. These trades were significant because both Jimmy Butler and Derrick Rose were the star of the Bulls, and this signaled a rebuild. This blockbuster trade that sent our star Jimmy Butler away to the Minnesota Timberwolves is what brought Zach LaVine to Chicago and made him a Chicago Bull, along with Chris Dunn and what was later to be Lauri Markkanen, who was the number 7 pick in the draft that year. Now, from 2017 all the way up to 2021, the Chicago Bulls were really bad. Really bad, guys. For their first 2 years, they were a 13th seed, and then 2 years after that, prior to the 2021-2022 year, they were 11th seed. But despite that, Zach LaVine was a breakout star on the team. Zach LaVine did not only stand out for his amazing athleticism and ability to dunk, but also his playmaking, his passing, his ability to move without the ball. Zach LaVine, on a pretty bad team, was a star. Because of Zach LaVine's skill and what he was able to do on a court, even on a bad team, he had many suitors, and one included the Sacramento Kings that offered him a 4-year deal for $80 million. Because Zach LaVine was a restricted free agent, the Bulls had a couple of days to match, and they did just that. The Bulls matched the 4-year $80 million, and Zach LaVine stayed on the Chicago Bulls up until 2022. Now, the 2021-2022 season was Zach LaVine's breakout season, the season where he became an all-star, and the season that allowed him to get the max contract that we are currently stuck with and dealing with today. Now, the Chicago Bulls made a few important moves that allowed Zach to be the best possible player he could be, and honestly, perhaps the Bulls were bamboozled. On August 8th, 2021, the Bulls acquired Lonzo Ball. And on August 11th, 2021, the Bulls acquired DeMar DeRozan through a sign-in trade. And these two moves put together one of the best teams the Chicago Bulls has had in a long time. They went on an amazing run. They were number 1 in the East for a while. After Lonzo got hurt, they ended up falling back, and they ended up being a 6th seed. They were above 500 for the first time in Zach LaVine's career. It was a great run. Zach LaVine looked amazing. And the Bulls were put up to a very difficult situation where they had to decide, were they going to give Zach LaVine a max contract, especially after Lonzo Ball went down, and the Bulls were able to see what they could be, what the potential for the Bulls could be. Were they to let this player that they've invested so much time in walk, or were they to give him a max contract? And I know I said earlier that perhaps the Bulls were bamboozled, but really they weren't. Even the fans weren't. In May 1st of 2022, after Lonzo went down, majority of fans did not believe Zach LaVine should get the 5-year, $200 million max contract. Bulls fans, and I believe the front office, knew that despite his talent and his ability, Zach LaVine was not a number 1 player. Honestly, maybe not even a number 2. And the max contract just was going to be an overpay and way too long. However, despite that, the Bulls decided to give Zach LaVine a $215 million 5-year contract that since then he has yet to earn or to live up to. So we see the talent. We saw the talent. But that 5-year, $215 million contract that Zach LaVine got, that the Bulls front office was hesitant in giving him, is what led to the downfall of the Chicago Bulls. Once again, Zach LaVine's trade value and where we are today. After the 2021-2022 season, where the Chicago Bulls ended up being a 6th seed and they got bounced in the first round to the Milwaukee Bucks, Zach LaVine has never been named an All-Star again. Moreover, his remaining time with the Bulls has been riddled with injuries, and his name has constantly been involved with trade rumors. Lonzo Ball never returned to the Chicago Bulls, and DeMar DeRozan, even as a veteran and the oldest person on the team, was the leading scorer, and it basically was his team. In the 2022-2023 season, the Chicago Bulls were able to take out the Toronto Raptors in the play-in, but they later lost to the Miami Heat. And then the 2023-2024 season, where Zach LaVine ended up not playing for the remainder of the year, the Chicago Bulls lost again in the play-in after defeating the Atlanta Hawks. They lost again in the second game of the play-in. To make matters worse, the 2023-2024 season started off really bad for the Chicago Bulls, and the season didn't turn around until Zach LaVine went out with the injury, which made it clear that Zach LaVine was neither needed nor wanted on the Chicago Bulls. That's where Zach LaVine requested a trade. The Chicago Bulls was okay with the trade. Zach LaVine had virtually quit on his team, and this is where we ended up now. I failed to mention that Zach LaVine also had a really bad relationship with head coach Billy Donovan because he benched him when he was playing horrible, as he should have. Now, the Bulls did try to honor Zach LaVine's wishes and find him a suitor of his wishing, but because of his large contract, they were unable to do so. So when Zach was nearing returning from his injury, his foot injury that he had been out on for a while, and nobody wanted that because it was going to be a bit of a hostile environment. Everyone knew he had already quit on the team. He didn't want to be there. He requested a trade. The Bulls were running out of options, and the only team that was showing major serious interest in Zach LaVine was the Detroit Pistons. Zach LaVine, of course, was requesting a trade because he was tired of being on a losing team. He definitely wasn't going to the Pistons. So he decided to elect to have a surgery that he really did not need to have, and that was the final straw. Zach LaVine and his team knew that the only way to get out of being traded to the Pistons was to have a season-ending surgery. The thing is we all knew this. We all knew that the Bulls front office was not going to be happy about this, and that Zach was not happy about being traded to the Pistons, but they were being fake about it. But that's until now. The Bulls front office and Zach LaVine are done being fake. We all know how we got here. There's not one side that's more wrong in the Zach LaVine and Chicago Bulls debacle. From the beginning, Zach LaVine was not a number one option. He hardly was a number two option. But based on the time invested, the Chicago Bulls front office thought that it was best based on the team they put together with Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, to give him a max deal. That worked out poorly. It really did. The Bulls decided not to trade Zach when his value was a little higher. They waited too long, and then his contract was too large to be traded once people kind of figured out who he really was. They were left with very few options but to try to trade him to the Pistons. Of course, he didn't want to go to the Pistons, so he elected to have that unnecessary surgery, and here is where we are today. I don't know when or to where Zach will be traded to, but it may be likely that he will still be on this team become the beginning of the season, and that's going to be crazy, especially because we don't even know where DeMar is going. So I hope this history helps, and yeah. Go Bulls.